Welcome to Painful Lessons Podcast. My name is Tyler Ramsey, and I'm in a great mood today. A great mood. We have a terrific episode today, and it's kind of an exciting episode because we have a guest host. It is a terrific, wonderful friend of mine that I've been friends with forever, and I've seen him through all kinds of ups and downs. And I know him from college originally, and his name is Blake Mycoskie, and he is best known for starting this spectacular company that really kind of changed the way business was done. And it was called Toms. And they had this just fantastic one for one, easy to understand, sort of like spiritual mythology. And that caught on. And when Tom started, all of a sudden, all of these companies just felt like they had to have this connection to the people that included giving back. And it really created such a wonderful movement. And it also turned out to be an incredibly gigantic windfall for Blake. And he made a fortune. And since leaving Tom's, you would think, or some people would think, that, man, money just solves all the problems that you're ever going to run into. Turns out that's not the truth. And since then, Blake has had ups and downs. And for let's say most recently, he had an incredibly long series of down that included becoming suicidal. And as everyone has good friends that goes through really dark periods, it was really difficult for me to see such a close friend of mine go through such a hard time. And I am in recovery. Painful Lessons is a podcast about recovery, but not just recovery from addictions, but recovery from depression, recovery from ego, all kinds of different recovery. And Painful Lessons was created, I like to say, it's all about the art of growth. We are crazy about any type of hard-earned wisdom. And my guest, Blake Mycoskie, has really been, honestly, he's now a champion of giving his hard-earned wisdom to others so that hopefully they can avoid some of the low lows that come with depression. He is a seeker, and he is very curious, and he's also very honest. So in his journey to get better, he found some things that worked out really well. Some things included plant medicine. Some things included books and learning from all kinds of different gurus. And one thing that really worked for him was reading a book called Thank God for Depression by by Kyle Nicolaides. Kyle Nicolaides. So Blake is going to take over in a second, and he's going to tell you about what he's learned from Kyle Nicolaides. And we have Kyle Nicolaides here. We're going to ask him questions. But I should also say we have a sponsor, and the name of the sponsor is Optimist, and they make non-alcoholic spirits. So cool. If you want to be a badass and make mocktails, go to optimist.com and be a total badass and make these non-alcoholic spirits. Thanks for listening to that. So I'm going to turn this over to Blake, who is totally awesome. And he is coming out of a really long stretch of depression. And what better person to learn from? It's like we all have the blues, but sometimes the blues stick around a little bit longer. So I'm going to turn this over to Blake. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm so honored to guest host Painful Lessons. I've been on the podcast twice myself and have shared some of my painful lessons. But today, to get to interview Kyle, who wrote the book, Thank God for Depression, is such an honor. It had a huge impact over me in my life. It really was one of the seminal texts that I went to try to kind of figure out and understand my depression, and ultimately played a pivotal role in me coming out of it. And I'm so grateful for that. And so my hope in this podcast is to just really create a platform for Kyle to share his knowledge and elaborate on some of the concepts in the book, and also just share his personal story. So Kyle, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so honored.
I think I should start with the context of how this happened. I really don't believe in random chance. I think synchronicity is something that the universe uses to assist us, and sometimes in our times of greatest need. So just to kind of paint the picture of where I was, it was in June of this past year. I was pretty much at the lowest possible point I've ever been in my life. I'd been struggling with a pretty serious depression for over a year. When I first encountered this serious depression, I got misdiagnosed by a psychiatrist with being bipolar 2, and I got put on an antipsychotic and a mood stabilizer. At first, there was a stimulant effect, so I felt pretty good for about a month or two, and then I went pretty numb. And that numbness just further caused me to get more and more depressed and more disconnected from my family and my friends. As I continued to get depressed, I then was put on an antidepressant on top of these 2 medications, which made it even worse. And I, as Tyler said, unfortunately, got suicidal. Back last April, I was kind of at the end of my rope. I didn't really know what to do. I felt totally trapped. I didn't feel that there was anything to look forward to in life. And I was really, really just being consumed with these horrible, dark thoughts, and it was really scary. At that time, I did see one factor that was pretty obvious to me, and that was all of the depression got much worse when I got put on these meds. So I was depressed, but I wasn't suicidal. I was down, but I wasn't hopeless. And then these meds, through a numbing effect and messing with my brain chemistry, made it much worse. So I decided, before giving up hope on life, I was going to do everything I could to get off the meds. And so I partnered with a great psychiatrist who really helps people get off pharmaceuticals. I started that journey, and about halfway into that journey, as I got off the second med, I really crashed, and I was at the point where I could barely get out of bed. I didn't want to see friends and family. I was really, really in a dark place. I was up in Marin, where I live part of the time, and on my calendar, I saw that I had scheduled a meeting in Mill Valley with a gentleman who I was doing some philanthropy with, or considering donating to his research. And I had this on my calendar for months, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can't cancel on this guy. No matter how bad I feel, I'm going to pull myself out of bed. I'm going to go to this meeting no matter what. And I did. And so I went to this meeting. It was at a coffee shop in Mill Valley, and we're having coffee, and I'm really honest with him about my mental state, but also wanting to really hear about his research and see if there's a way that I could help. At some point in the coffee, I decided to go to the bathroom. And this is what's so amazing, is I was standing in line for the bathroom, and the bathroom was kind of shared the coffee shop with a bookstore, a tiny little bookstore. And as I was standing there, waiting for the bathroom, your book was right there. There wasn't like a self-help, section or anything. It was mixed in with all different types of books. But this book, I'll pull it up right here. It says, "Thank God for Depression." And it was like staring me in the eyes. And I was just like, what a provocative title. And, I'm definitely not thanking God for my depression right now. But, the message in this, maybe it's a message I need to hear. So I bought the book. About 2 weeks later, my psychiatrist helped me find a facility in Arizona called Alternative to Med Center, where they specialize in helping people wean off, taper off their pharmaceutical meds. And I was having such a hard time with this process that I decided to go there for 5 weeks and finish my tapering and fully get off my meds. And I took this book with me. While I was there, the program was incredible, helped me in so many different ways. I did ultimately get off my meds, which gave me a lot more clarity and helped me start feeling like myself again. But I read the book, I think, 3 times. And as you will see, I pretty much have underlined and dog-eared almost, every 5th page. And what I want to do today is to really help people know that there is a way out, that depression is temporary, no matter how long it seems like it's lasting in your life. And I really am excited to hear, how you obtain the knowledge that you then share in this book. It's very well laid out. It's very practical. There's very specific exercises you can do in a number of different areas of your life to really help you understand your depression and then ultimately help you ultimately thank God for it. So I want to start by reading something that I read. It's on page 22 in the book. And this is, when I read this, it was the first moment of hope that I had in a really long time. And I want to read it for anyone listening, because if you are depressed or you know someone that's depressed, I think the biggest thing is not losing hope. You can't even begin to use the knowledge in this book unless you have some kernel of hope. And so what you wrote, which spoke to me so great, was, there is an end date to the pain. It's temporary. Depression is only a chapter in your life, not the entire novel. Most importantly, it's not who you are, not who you ever were, and won't be who you will be. There is reason and purpose for your suffering. You will not only overcome this depression, but one day you will wake up and be overwhelmingly thankful for all of it because of who it has made you. In this moment, no matter what it entails, you are right where you're supposed to be. One day, I know you'll wake up and love your life so much that you wouldn't take back anything that led you here, and you'll say, thank God for depression. I mean, your confidence in writing that to someone who is going through depression was remarkable. It was the first step of me having some faith that I would get through this. And so I'd love to start by hearing more of your story of depression and how you got this confidence that it would end.
Yeah. Oh man, I have so many emotions right now. I'm like, I'm so thankful. I mean, well, I'm nervous. I just want to name that out right now. Like, I feel very nervous. I feel nervous about being articulate and nervous about helping people. I'm so thankful to be here. I'm really emotional hearing your story because that, like, my entire intention was just trying to help people out of it and help people out of it quicker. And I'm so thankful that it spoke to you. So I'm getting very emotional now. And also your bravery and your courage just to speak on mental health, and as a successful entrepreneur and as a successful man. Like, I just want to say that again, like, men need to talk about their mental health. So it's so healing for me to hear you share your story, and I know it's going to be healing for so many other people. And I forgot your question.
I think just paint the picture. I mean, I know your story, but I think others, to really understand the context of how you suffered, why you suffered, and then ultimately, how you helped yourself out of it.
Yeah. So I will try to make this the most concise way that I can tell it. When I was a kid, one of my earliest memories was my great-grandmother wagging her finger at me, and she was like probably 150 years old and just terrifying, and she'd be like shrieking, just like, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be the president of the United States, and I was like 4. And it was terrifying. She was screaming at me, and I was like, I just want to be a garbage man, like, I just want to hang out, like. And from a young age, there was this pressure. Like, I remember feeling this really intense pressure to like do something with my life. And then from age 5 to 18, it was like, you have to get a 4.0, you have to do all these extracurricular activities, you have to get A's, A+, you have to get into the college. And then I get to college, and I've never been more miserable. And I wanted to be a musician, I wanted to be a rock star, I wanted to start a band, but I went to college to make my family happy. And what happened was, I was miserable, and then I had the idea of how I thought college should be, which was, people are like, it's the best time of your life, it's supposed to be amazing, and like, here I was hating it. So I told my parents, I said, give me 6 months to drop out and try to become a famous musician, and at the end of the 6 months, if I'm not a famous musician, I'll go back to school. So what happened was, I dropped out, I moved to a little cottage in Eagle Rock that I talk about in the book that was haunted as hell. Like, I didn't know anything about energy, but like, bro, really bad energy. So I move out, and it was the first time in my life, I was like 18 or 19, where I had space.
Yeah.
There wasn't anyone telling me what to do. I didn't have anywhere to be, and I fell apart. So I was 18 going on 95. I was suicidal. I felt like life had nothing more to give me. And I was having panic attacks. I was having all these mental health issues. and I had no vocabulary for it because no one in my family talked about depression, even though multiple people in my family had killed themselves. Everybody on my family, not everyone, but a lot of people in my family had been suffering from depression, didn't say a word. So here I was 18 and didn't know what to do, was having the hardest time of my life. And then I met a manager who got me a record label, who got me all these other things. And then before I knew it, it was time to be a rock star and like put my first record on tour. So I made the naive assumption of, oh, maybe if I get famous and make enough money, like this black hole in my chest will disappear. You know, maybe I'll feel better about myself. Maybe I'll feel worthy to be alive. So I meet two dudes on Craigslist, make a band called Beware Darkness, and within 6 months we make our first record with my dream producer. Within a year we're on tour. We have a top 5 rock hit. We're touring the world, and I'm living the dream, quotes, but I've never been more depressed. And all this success just exasperated the depression I had. So I went from being broke and depressed to having money and depressed. You know, I went
Still
from,
depressed.
Yeah, still depressed.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So I remember reading my tour book, and I was like, wow, I remember reading my diary from being on tour, and it was like, London, never been more sad. Berlin, want to kill myself. And it's hilarious, but it's not, you know?
Yeah.
And then what happened too is people resonated because I was going on stage just raising hell, smashing guitars, breaking stuff, screaming, and people loved it. And I would be suicidal every time I finished a show because I would just basically abuse myself. So that went on for like 2 or 3 years, and then I had a breakdown, and I broke the band up, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And the super long short story was I kind of bounced through 1 or 2 more records with the band, and then the band broke up. I put my entire identity into the band. So then when the band broke up, I had no idea who I was. So I found myself 28, living back at home with my family, flipping things on Craigslist because I didn't know what else to do with my life. So, you know, I went from being on Conan O'Brien to being in a living room with, you know, a family trying to set their Wii up to flip it. But, and then I bottomed out even more. And it got so bad that I was suicidal every day for like a year and a half. The only person I opened up to depression about was my first music manager, and his response was, if you're that depressed, go kill yourself. So I opened up to a male about that, and I made the decision, it's not safe for me to talk about depression. It's not safe for me to be depressed. I have to hide my emotions. I have to hide everything. I was drinking. I was getting high. And then I go back to Santa Barbara, and I just started drinking every night. I got off a tour, and I said, I'm just going to keep drinking, keep, you know, doing anything to not feel this pain. And then I had a come to God moment where I got in bed one night after drunk driving for like the 5th time, and I just prayed to God. I was like, God, please kill me. Like, I want to die. Like, I'm done. I'm done with this life. And the next morning, my mom's been sober 40 years, and she said, hey, I think you should stop drinking. And that never occurred to me, that alcohol could have any effect on mental health or depression. No one had even talked about what a therapist was to me. No, I had no vocabulary. So when I was 28, stopped drinking. It was the best decision I ever made. And within, you know, days, all this help came that I never would have thought. Like, I got a therapist. That's the only thing that's coming up to. I'm still a little nervous, but I'm going to keep going.
Man, you were really surrounded by a bunch of dummies, though.
Well, so that's the and like, I don't want to harp on that, but it was kind of insane, like the amount of PTSD from the music industry I got. And like also the energetics of like, I didn't think I deserved to be alive, and then I attracted abusive producers, abusive managers, like just abuse all across the board of like people giving me that reflection of like, you're a shithead, you don't deserve to live. You know, so that was also confusing, was being so young, like 20, 21, making a bunch of money, but then it costs you your mental health, and then everyone loves you for it. Like, people still talk about that first record. They're like, it's in their hearts and fans love it. And for me, it's confusing because I'm like, wait, that almost killed me. And it was the worst time of my life, surrounded with people who were not nice to me. What's the cost of that? So it really made me look at success differently, because I never once felt like I was successful. And it was also mind-blowing to be like, wait, I got the hit, I got on TV, I got all these things, and I still don't feel good about myself. Like, after what amount of songs on the radio, or after what amount of streams, or after what amount of, fans telling me I'm great, am I actually going to believe that I'm great?
Yeah.
So that was a big wake-up call for me. So I'm 28 and then do 6 months of therapy, and then I'm texting the old head of my record label about ayahuasca because I saw it on a news channel. Like, I saw Lisa Ling do a report on ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I'm randomly texting her, and I was like, hey, we should do a ceremony sometime. Don't know where that thought came from.
Yeah.
Just totally random.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay. And then a week later, she's like, found the shaman, found 8 of our friends. Like, we're going to go to Petaluma and do some ayahuasca. And I was like, what? So at that point, I'd also started antidepressants. And like my life path is interesting because I will go super hard. I think the goddess Ma is using me somehow, because I'll go from, totally Western pharmaceutical route to like the most crazy shamanic route to just see what works.
Yeah.
So I can help people and say like, hey, I tried this. I'm the healing tour guide. So she says, yeah, we're going to do ayahuasca, and I'm on antidepressants for 6 months, and it's the first time I've ever felt some kind of relief from depression.
Wow.
And this has been going on from like, 14 to 28 or something.
Yeah.
So when no one told me I had to get off antidepressants for ayahuasca, and I lost my shit, like freaked out. And I started calling all my friends, and I was like, this is some crazy shaman stuff. Like, I'm not going to do this. Getting off these pills is suicidal, because I thought if I get off these antidepressants, I'm going to go right back to that place that I'm going to want to kill myself all the time.
Yeah.
So I talked to the shaman, and in LA fashion, he answers the phone. He's like, hold on, I'm on the freeway. I'm in my convertible. I need to pull my top up. And I'm like, what kind of shaman is this? This is like the most LA shaman I've ever heard in my life. I'm like, dear God. So I'm looking for answers. I'm like, should I do this ayahuasca? Should I not do this ayahuasca? Like, what are the risks, So he's the only one that said, you got to listen to your heart. And he said, I'll never forget this. He said, ayahuasca will get to the root of your depression, where the pharmaceuticals in the West will solve the symptoms. And when he told me that, something went off.
Yeah.
And I said, what? And I said, I got to check this out. So I go, is this boring or is this okay?
That's great.
Okay, I just want to check.
Dude, you're doing great. Hey, listen, if you're nervous at all, just so you know, you're killing it. Don't even fucking worry about it. You're doing great.
Okay.
You're a piece of gold right now.
You're so sweet. So I get to the ayahuasca ceremony. There's 8 of us. We're all friends. And I turn to my friend. I can't say her name, but I turn to my friend, and everyone's nervous. And like me and her, just like, bro, whatever we see on this medicine and experience on this medicine cannot be worse than our minds and the hell we've been living in.
Yeah.
So
before you pause there, I think there's a part of the book that I thought was really great, where you talk about sometimes the need for things to fully fall apart.
Yeah.
And this fear of we have of trying to hold it all together, even if we're suffering. And so you just brought that thought back to me of like, that sometimes we're suffering so much, but we're trying to hold it together, and we're afraid of letting it fall apart. But in the book, you said, well, what would you rather have? How scary is it if you just let everything fall apart? Because at least there's a place to go from there. Whereas if you try to just manage it and hold it together, and that's a lot of the self-medication of alcohol and other things, you're going to live in pain and torment your whole life. But sometimes if you just surrender and you let it fall apart, which is what it sounds like you did, then there's a place to move from there. And so it sounds like that was kind of some of the rationalization of, no matter what happens on this ayahuasca trip, it can't be worse than the pain I've been living in.
That's so true. And thank you. Thank you for saying that, because 2 thoughts just popped up. The importance of surrender is huge. And America and the West is a pressure cooker. And society has these scripts of what success is, of who we're supposed to be as men, how we're supposed to be as men, all these things, and we can start to mentalize what we think our life should be. And I remember for me, it was this whole, if I say that I'm weak, or if I say that I'm hurting, it means there's something deeply wrong with me. And if I admit that there's something deeply wrong with me, then that means I'm broken. And I don't want anyone to see that.
Yeah.
Because the last time I opened up to someone, I got destroyed, near annihilated.
Yeah.
So thank you for saying that, because it's such a good point. And especially now with the internet, there's so many facades of like having to keep it together, or like having to be on all the time. And it's, again, it's a societal construct. It's not a real thing.
Yeah.
Like, even we can talk about purpose and stuff like that, but it's like, the idea that we need to strive and like be someone, we can just be ourselves, and like whatever we do is enough.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and so you just brought up another memory from the book, and that is, you have a chapter in the book about how to talk about your depression.
mm-hmm.
Will you, before we get to the ayahuasca experience, which I think is interesting, I want to, share something with everyone listening. Like, what's fascinating about where we're going to get to with your ayahuasca experience and some of the insights that brought you is, I have worked and have spoken on this podcast about it with ayahuasca and plant medicines for many years. And they brought a lot of healing to me at different times in my life. The interesting thing about my experience with the deepest, darkest depression I've ever been in and coming out of it is, because I was on these pharmaceuticals, I was not able to go back to the plant medicines. But I think there was a real divine reason for that, because I think that God wanted me to learn to work through certain areas of my life that were the underlying cause of my suffering and my depression, without kind of a quote quick fix.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting is, while I know that ayahuasca had a huge impact on you in getting out of your depression, your book really has nothing to do with plant medicine.
Yeah.
Your book is very practical of, let's look at self-care, let's look at your thoughts, let's look at, how you have more presence, let's look at, your identity, are you living in alignment? I mean, these are all very practical pieces of advice and practices that you give in the book, which were critical for me coming out of my depression. So it's interesting that definitely I'm a big believer and do a lot of philanthropy in the plant medicine space, that it really can be a great medicine to get to the root of your suffering. But also, there's just so much practical knowledge in this book for anyone that's suffering. By no means do they need to take plant medicine. They can work through the practices and the exercises in your book, and like me, come so far. So before we go back to the ayahuasca experience, how do you talk about your depression, and why is that important if you are currently suffering for depression?
It's a great question. I think I write in the book that it's mandatory to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is, if you don't talk about it, the energy gets stuck, and it becomes something much bigger than it is. And the thing about depression is that it tells us stories.
Yes.
And a lot of depression is thoughts.
Yes.
So we can have these thoughts and fear of, is this going to end? Oh my God. If I tell someone, what's going to happen? I don't want to tell someone. I mean, so if you're afraid of talking about your depression, I think a good example, a good practice is to turn it into a meditation and say, what are my fears around speaking it out loud? And like my case, I had some real practical examples of what can go wrong when you talk about your depression.
Yeah.
And I think I write about that in the book, because I also had a huge healing around that person in an ayahuasca ceremony. But I think the worst case that happens when you talk about your depression is someone's going to attack you for it or judge you for it. And the good news about that is, maybe I don't need this person in my life because they don't understand. And what's interesting is, when I first started talking about my depression, there was a handful of my friends who had no reference point because they had never experienced depression.
Yeah.
Just like some people might never experience diabetes in their life.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And I had some friends not believe me because they said, bro, you wear leather jackets and you like rock out on stage. How could you ever be depressed? Which still happens to me. I had a girl do that with anxiety. I had old Greek men do that to me. What do you have to be depressed about? You drive this car and you live in Santa Barbara and this, And I'm just like, so I think the most important thing when you start talking about your depression is knowing that. I just spoke to someone about ADHD for the first time and telling them how bad it was, and she gave me the whole like, you don't have ADHD, and I was like, here we go again.
Yeah.
You know, so some people might you're gonna get a whole plethora of responses, and some might be not helpful. Some are not helpful, but it's all worth it because you're gonna get that one person who says, oh, I was depressed and I healed that, or have you heard of this?
Yeah.
So I think the thing about if you do not talk about it, you're never gonna get healed.
Yeah.
Because you're just going to keep it inside, and then it's going to be this huge monster that is going to seem unconquerable.
Yeah.
And the thing about depression is that I believe with all my heart that anybody can heal it. Like it's like a broken bone. Like there are things you can do.
Yeah.
And
your book very clearly outlines that.
And yes, it's as simple as that, but then it's also mystical.
Yes.
Because, you know, depression is not like a broken bone where you break your bone and you go to the hospital and they say, okay, here's the healing thing.
Yeah.
Everyone does that. We fixed it. Go back. Depression is a journey, and everyone's experience of depression is completely unique, and everyone's healing of it is completely unique.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the magic is, because what heals me may not heal you.
Yeah.
And my goal was to just present a complete smorgasbord of here's all the paths you can walk down. Try these things.
Yeah.
See what happens, because you don't know where it's going to lead.
There, yeah. And I think
beautiful what you just said, and it sparked something else. And it's really important to talk to other people about it, because the current state that our mind is in when it's depressed cannot heal itself.
Yeah.
Like the depressed mind cannot pull itself out.
It can't, no.
And I'm learning this through tantric practices and through lineage teachings, and that psychedelics fits into this too, but we need a charge and consciousness and intelligence that is greater than, and that can be a therapist. It can be friends, like what you just said, to remind you. It can be plant medicine. It can be literally having an encounter and experience with a deity or a consciousness that is so much bigger than you that it can just literally, it has the power, because Tantra is all about power, and it just has the power to knock you out of it. And I think it's brilliant what you did talking to your friends too, because I think that when we're depressed, it's almost like someone puts wool over our eyes, and we can't. It's like, it's interesting because it takes us out of time and space, and we're just in suffering. Like we think we're never going to get out of it. We think nothing's going to work. It shuts off all possibility, all opportunity, and then we just get stuck in this place. And that's not true.
Yeah.
Like, again, depression's a liar, because the capital T truth of this reality is that things are changing all the time.
Yeah.
There's nothing permanent. There's nothing certain. You know, it's like if we're going to be dead one day and not depressed anymore, but when we're so in depression, it's all we can see is our own suffering.
Yes.
And for me, the hardest part, not the hardest part, but one of the most challenging things that I thought about with this book is how do I, because I know, obviously I know what it's like to be there, but how do I create a little bit of space, just enough space so someone can say, wait, what? This is going to end? Because I think a lot of depression is also conditioning, and we have a certain amount of feeling a certain thing. Our thoughts respond in a certain way, and then there's a certain conditioning to it. So it's like, how do you bump that conditioning off a little bit so there's a little bit space to choose a different exit?
You're taking me to all the places that I was excited to talk about in the book. So for anyone who's really excited about ayahuasca, it might take another 30 minutes before we get to this conscious expanding experience that Kyle had. So let's talk about thoughts. There's a whole chapter in the book about thoughts, and how thoughts, especially with a depressed mind, can really be your enemy. And how did you learn, and how do you share on how we can, get a more control over our thoughts, and how we can use our thoughts to help us instead of just continuing to hurt us?
I want to share this pretty zany experience I had 2 days ago.
Okay.
Great word.
I was like, there's got to be a word that's better than cool. Yeah. So I had a mini shamanic clearing.
Okay.
And my partner is basically a shamanic Indiana Jones. She's a complete badass. Yeah. Like, if there's a demon that needs to be pulled out of someone, she just takes her whip out and she's like, let's ride, baby. This is what I was made for. So
can't wait to meet her. This sounds great. Another step on my journey.
Next guest.
Wait. Next guest for sure.
You would love her.
Yeah.
That's going to be my next book. It's like, it's going to be a shamanic approach to anxiety
Yeah.
and all the demons that got pulled out of me. I won't tell those stories now, but they're amazing.
Please do.
So I have this experience where all this fear is coming up, and I start to panic,
Okay.
and I start to notice thoughts come up. Oh my God, this is going to happen. Oh my God, this is going to happen. And then I notice I start to panic more. And then there's enough space where I remind myself, said, hey, Kyle, you're 33 just sitting in a bedroom right now. Nothing's wrong.
Yeah.
Your girlfriend's holding you. And then I started breathing again, and I became calm.
Mm.
And then a thought came up, but what about this? And then my body became tense. And I realized, oh my God, I'm having all these thoughts that are triggering emotions in my body, which are freaking me out.
Yeah.
So thoughts and emotions, there's a way to deal with them and there's a way not to deal with them. And I think, again, it comes back to space.
Okay.
So if we're unconscious of how we're thinking, if we're unconscious about how we're feeling, then we're basically just getting hit in the face all the time with whatever comes up. And we're not aware of it. We're not aware of triggers, we're not aware of conditioning and stuff like that. So if we start to become aware of, what am I thinking? What am I saying to myself? How is it affecting my emotions? How is it affecting my moods? And just get curious.
Mm-hmm.
And then creating a little space. Oh, I notice when I think this thing, I start to panic. Because what a lot of people don't talk about, and I forgot this recently, is how quick thoughts and emotions are. You can have a thought and then an emotion comes up right away.
Yeah.
And then because you have an emotion, you have another thought. And I talk about that in the book, calling it the 7-layer shit cake.
Yeah.
Where,
I remember that.
yeah. And I think I still do it all the time. And I think it's really important to notice of just saying, okay, I have a thought. Do I need to do anything with it? No. Like, that's the thing too. And I think that's a lot easier said than done, because I think what happens is we have these thoughts. Most people take them all as truth,
Yes.
but they're not as truth. And it's like something to consider is, do we have the same mind at 15 that we have at 25? Do we have the same mind that we had at 25 that we have at 30? Were we thinking about the same things at 27 that we were at 32? Or the fears we had last week, or the fears we had now? So just noting the temporary nature of our mind to change. And we're almost addicted to thoughts. We're addicted to thinking. It's always happening.
Yeah.
And I think just because you think something doesn't mean it's true. And then just questioning and saying, is this thought helping me?
Yeah.
Is it serving me? Like, I did a practice with my Tantra teacher yesterday, and she asked a question that said, if you have a fear, ask, how am I making this fear bigger? Like, what am I doing to feed this fear?
Mm.
And you could say that, what am I doing to feed these thoughts? And it's really interesting, because we just talk, then the conversation becomes about awareness and consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And are we conscious enough to watch our own thoughts? And that's a lifelong practice.
Yeah.
So
Wait, expand on that, please. I think that's so important. I think that's. I mean, what is the untethered soul? I think it's all about that. I think if you don't mind, just expand on that. I think that's so important.
Yeah, of course. So thinking, what's coming to me right now is that there's a matrix. So I want to talk about conditioning again, because I think it's really important to mental health, and I don't think people talk about it a lot. So when we're babies, we're born, we have no conditioning. We're just eating mushy food and bananas. We're just being cute. We don't have any conception of who we should be, how we should act, what success is, what the word success means. Purpose, we have no concept of anything. And then we become older, we start to get conditioned with identities. That can be brother, sister. It can be I have to be wealthy. And there's family conditioning. There's cultural conditioning. There's societal conditioning. There's all these different ways that we can be fed narratives of how we think we need to be in this world and how we need to act.
Mm-hmm.
And the generations before us are given scripts. Like something like the 9-to-5 job. That wasn't a thing 300 years ago. Like enough people came together and said, oh, I think this is the way we need to do things.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at thoughts, it's interesting because I think I have a whole practice on what to do with the I do. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean,
Sorry,
I once again, I'm going to plug this book. Like I use this page 158 to 160. There's the thought alchemy practice, and you have a list of questions, which I won't go through now. But I think for someone who is struggling with depression and having ruminating thoughts, and that was a real one that I was having. My thought was, I'm trapped. My best days are behind me.
Yep.
I'm never going to be able to be entrepreneurial again.
Yep.
I'm not a good dad. All these negative thoughts, and they would ruminate. And so when you take one, let's just say, for instance, that I'm not a good dad, and you do this practice where you have a very specific list of questions to ask yourself about this thought. And, Byron Katie does this work, really, really well. If anyone's familiar with her work, where she asks, in her process, she asks, is this true? And then if you say yes, then how do you know, can you be 100% certain without a benefit of a doubt that this is true? And it takes you through this. And this introspection, it in some ways, it takes the power away from these negative thoughts, because now you look at them objectively versus believing them.
Yeah.
And that's what your mind is doing to when you're depressed. And so I don't think we'll go through the full exercise now, but it's in the book. And I'm sure you have notes on this podcast where people can click or, sometimes podcasts have that. Do you have that, Tyler?
We don't have notes.
Okay.
But listen, I'm open to adding that.
Yeah. I just think these 2 pages are great for someone who's going through. We'll find a way to put it in, because it is a great, very simple way to kind of take the power away from those negative thoughts.
Maybe we'll just be like, hey, this is the book. It's on page. What is it? 178?
Order it on Amazon. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, we can put the link and also just any information in the byline of each.
Yeah.
It's called, once again, it's called Thank God for Depression.
Yes. Okay, Kyle. So let's go back to the ayahuasca experience.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, before we go to that, one question I have is, so the knowledge that you have, this book that you wrote, where did you learn this stuff? Because obviously you experienced your depression. Tyler made it abundantly clear that you didn't have very many good advisors or coaches around you helping.
Dummies, all dummies.
All dummies, as he said.
All dummies. That's funny.
So you come out. We know. I'll just cut to the chase. The ayahuasca experience has a life transformation effect on you. Helps you out of your long-term depression. But like I said, this whole book is filled with very practical non-plant medicine interventions that you can do and exercises. So where did you learn all this stuff?
It's a good question. I'm not sure if I know how to answer that.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the inspiration for the book was I had these 3 blistering plant medicine experiences.
Okay.
And the first one is in the book where I got out of depression.
Yeah.
The second was I got the energy to break out of a record deal I was in.
Okay.
And then the third, I relived a premature birth and started this other healing that was mind-blowing. And then I had this little spark of an idea of, I should write a blog to help people out of depression.
Yeah.
Just a blog post.
Yeah.
And then the second idea came up of, what are all the things I wish I would have known at 20?
Yeah.
That would have saved me a decade of my life? What are all the things that no doctor told me, no friend told me? I wrote this book for myself and for the person who's hurting who has no map.
Yeah, it was a map for me. I mean, that's for sure. I mean, that's what I think is, why I have so much energy around this podcast and getting this information out there, is that I think the word map is a great example. I was lost. I was struggling. I had access to every great, doctor, therapist, shaman in the world. Right, Tyler?
Dude, he literally had access to everything.
Wow.
The best of everything. He was going back and forth to Harvard. He's getting electrodes attached to his head and zapped. It was everything for a year, and nothing was working. It was some things would work for a little bit of time. It was very painful to watch as someone who was dying to help. And I remember he had, we were in Sedona and he had just had a massage, and I'd like joke about this, like, hey, there's nothing better for someone than depression to spend about 60 minutes in their head. And he came out of it.
Me.
Oh my God. He came out of it just like half panic attack, half full suicidal. I mean, it was just, you could just tell it absolutely rocked him. And all of a sudden I kind of thought things were getting a little bit better, and I'm like, no, they just got way worse. So, I mean,
I think the point I'm trying to make is that there is so much practical knowledge in here. You know, how old are you?
33.
You're a super young man.
you're a baby.
And you experienced this depression for a long time. I'm so excited to get to the realizations and the great service that the plant medicine was, because I do believe that is a great path for many people. But this practical knowledge, I mean, where did it come from? Like, I mean, how did you, for instance, there's a whole chapter in this book about self-care.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where did you learn the importance of self-care and exercise and these like basic things that we, when we're depressed, we often overlook, or we're too tired to do, or we don't feel like, oh, that's going to help that much, but they can have a profound effect. I mean, speaking of Sedona, you know, one of the big things that the program did for me is it got me working out again every single day.
Yeah.
Working out once, maybe twice a day, getting my body moving, getting in that zone 2 for an hour multiple times a week. I mean, so let's just talk about self-care for a second. Like, where did you learn the importance of that? And in that in that topic, what are some of the most important things that someone could start doing today if they're feeling mildly to severely depressed that will have an immediate impact?
That's amazing. That's a really great question. And I think there's a spectrum to depression. There's what are the manageable things? What are the things you can do right now? And then what are the bigger pieces?
Yep.
And I think I just got so excited about what to answer and my mind went blank. I love it. I think it comes back to experience of when I was 20, I had a doctor tell me you need to exercise and eat right and watch Joel Osteen. And for me, I was having a full-blown existential meltdown. And my thought was, how the hell is that going to help me?
Yeah.
That's not what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
And I needed someone to tell me why things are important. And that's what I never got. So the actual writing in
That's
this...
pretty decent advice, though. I mean, Joel Osteen is...
Well,
yeah.
he's a stud.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah.
But no, in looking back, it was really good advice, but I had no frame of reference for it. I had no context.
Yeah.
Because I had no context for depression.
Yeah.
And I think...
But that's what's important. Let me interrupt for a second. Like, you can go on to TED.com and watch so many TED Talks on the importance of exercise for your mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, John Rady has written a great book about this, and so many others. But I mean, you know, if you had been given that advice with more context, which I think is what we're going to try to do right now, is, I mean, if there is a magic pill for mental health, it's exercise.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anyone will disagree with me on that. And the reason is what is happening, you know, in biochemically when you have that elevated heart rate for, you know, at least 30 minutes a day for several days a week, that is having the greatest impact on your brain with serotonin, dopamine. And so I think that the advice that was given to you was overly simplistic and did not have the backup of, okay, when you're depressed, your brain is not firing the way that it was meant to fire. And one of the ways to get your brain to start firing better is what you eat and sleep and working out. And so no matter how hard it is, even if it's starting with just a walk around your block every day, if you're listening to this and you're depressed and you're not exercising regularly, you absolutely have to do that. I mean, it is an absolute critical thing. You talk about in the book, there's so many TED Talks on this if you need to have the science to back it up. But I know from my experience of coming out of this, it has been an absolutely critical thing. And when I find myself now waking up and having some anxiety, which typically if I'm going to have anxiety, it's first thing in the morning. For some reason, it's still there. the best thing I can do is just put my running shoes on and just start running.
Yep.
You know, and almost immediately, I mean, 15, 20 minutes in, those racing thoughts, those ruminations go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you talk about exercise, you talk about, you know, eating healthy. What else? I really liked when you talked about a morning routine. Maybe elaborate on that some.
I think if I was going to give advice to someone who's struggling with depression and just needed practical advice, it would be what you said. Making sure you're getting enough sleep, prioritizing that, eating healthy. A big practice that I'm huge on is elimination. Because every time I've eliminated things, I've had major healings.
Talk to us about that.
So
Ooh, good.
yeah,
Tyler loves elimination,
Yeah.
especially of one specific thing called alcohol.
yeah, no, that's true, and it's.
Saved his life and some
Yeah.
of ours.
I mean,
Stop blacking out.
our whole culture is so focused on what do I need to get? How can I accumulate more? What can I do to heal my depression? It's like, what if you let go of things to heal your depression?
I love this.
What
This
if you
is a
let
nugget.
go of things to heal your anxiety?
Yeah.
So the first thing I would eliminate is social media use, internet use.
Yeah.
Like try putting that away and seeing what effect that has on your mental health.
Yeah.
Try eliminating gluten, sugar, alcohol, weed, because most of those things probably not going to help you.
Yeah.
So because we don't know what we're
Yeah, like duh. It turns out downers are not great for depression.
So the practical advice is start eliminating things, start taking things out one by one, and then see how your mood is affected. Because what happens is we might be feeling things that we have no idea about because we're drinking or we're getting high or whatever, something like that. So, and then when we get to the emotion, then we can actually start to feel it and heal it and move on. And then I think other practical things are getting a therapist and moving, getting sunlight.
Yeah.
And again,
I'm a firm believer in also wearing like a Hawaiian shirt.
That's true. That's so true. Yeah, and I know those things are very hard if you're depressed. And I know those things are very hard and just working with a therapist to get practical tips, practical advice of what you can do when thoughts comes up, what you can do with emotions come up. Spirituality is another huge one.
For sure. I want to get to spirituality.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah.
Let's go back.
Yeah.
I've led people along for a long time now. Those who are very interested in this ayahuasca journey, which I am, let's go there. Okay, so you're there. Your friend says it can't be worse than what we've experienced. Let's drink this stuff.
And it's also interesting because before I want to say the story is that the ayahuasca was not a fix-all. It was because I had 6 months of antidepressants before that when I was seeing a therapist and she taught me skills. It was the 3 years of TM I had. It was the yoga practice. It was all these things that led up to that. So when I had the ayahuasca experience, I had tools of what to do with it. So
That's important. That's important.
yeah, it's very important because this is the thing about depression. And honestly, I don't think anything in life is like this because there's not a one-all be-all. It's everything. Everything's a tool.
You
No
talk about
magic pill.
Yeah.
There's no magic pill. And I've been a very devoted tantra practitioner for 2.5 years. And even that, they say you need a therapist, you need support practices, you need all these other things to be a better practitioner. And mental health is like that too.
Yeah.
Journal, exercise, do these other things. And if they don't work, great, try something else. There's
Yeah.
always something you can try. There's always something you can do. And if you don't know it, it's just because your brain does not have the power to think of it or find it alone.
Yeah.
That's literally the only reason. It's not hopelessness. It's not pessimism. It's not, I'm a failure, I don't deserve it. It's none of those things. It's literally, you have just not found the material thing that's going to help you.
Yeah.
And I think
Get
that's
to
re-
ayahuasca though. Get to
Yeah,
ayahuasca.
okay, sorry.
No, but I think this is such an important point.
Very important.
You know, because
We got it.
you talk about in the book that it is everything matters. I think is the exact phrase you use in the book, and I 100% believe that. Maybe in my 20s and 30s and early 40s before I really encountered depression for the first time, I was just flowing. I was being an entrepreneur. I was doing my thing, and a lot of these things, frankly, didn't matter. I was just, But when you are faced with a challenge in your mental health, all of a sudden, all of this matters, and you've got to find the right combination for you. It's different for everyone, and that's why I feel like it is important, like you said, to stay curious and to try many different things. And that's why another reason why it's good to talk about and to reach out to community. And I was just thinking that, if you are struggling with depression right now and for whatever reason you don't feel like you can talk to your friends or your wife or your husband or your parents, there are lots of free online communities, that you can just literally log into a Zoom link and be talking with other people who are struggling. And I highly recommend that, because they're going to be able to give you resources, and this worked for me, or this or this book. And so it all matters. But what mattered a lot to you was ayahuasca. So let's get there.
So I get to this ayahuasca ceremony. I drink the medicine. I have no expectations. And
Did you puke?
no, I
Did it make
didn't.
you puke?
I didn't.
No purging.
I
Wow.
didn't purge until my third time, I think. But it was the experience that my soul had wanted that I was not aware of since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it was touching God, experiencing God, knowing that I am God, that I'm a part of God, that you're a part of God, divinity.
Yeah.
And it's touching and knowing that inner divinity and having an encounter with bodies of consciousness that are infinite and eternal, and feeling that bliss and that joy. And that was the first night I ever drank ayahuasca, and it changed everything.
Yeah. Wow.
So I wake up the next day and I'm on Wachuma, and I'm walking through this petaluma.
Explain what that is to
Oh.
people who don't know.
Wachuma is a cactus. It's a
different plant medicine.
It's a different plant medicine, yeah. It lasts 10 to 12 hours. It's not as visual, but you can have visuals on it. It's a heart medicine. People say it's masculine. Other people say it's feminine. And the shaman that I was working with used it as an integration tool for ayahuasca. So I am alone walking through what was I walking through? Just walking through a path, and nature's buzzing all around me. And the best way I can explain it, it's like going from like a 1920s Disney, like Steamboat Willie cartoon,
Okay.
to 3D Pixar. Like
Yeah.
that was the light switch for me of, I had this idea of what I thought life was. I had this idea of who I thought I was. I had this idea of what I thought reality was. And then you drink the plant medicine, and I realized everything I knew was wrong. There's so much more just beyond this reality, beyond my senses. There's so many different levels of consciousness out there. And that's one of those things you can tell somebody, but then you have to experience.
Totally.
So then I thought, how the hell did I get here? What led me here? And then the second thought was depression led me here. And then I thought, if depression led me here, how could my depression how could it ever be a bad thing?
Yeah.
Like, my depression literally led me to a spiritual awakening. If I didn't have suffering, if I didn't have that pain, I never would have sought these healing modalities that brought me back to God. I remembered who I was because of depression. And
That's beautiful.
in this material reality, we need heat and we need an irritant to have transformation.
Yeah.
None of us are waking up and saying, "Oh, I feel amazing. I'm going to transform today." It's like it's that pain, it's that suffering that we are privileged to have here in a human body to transmute and alchemize into remembering who we are. And for me, that's what the whole issue was I had forgot my spiritual nature. I forgot who I was. I forgot that I was a piece of Ma, of the goddess, of God, walking around on this planet, and so is everyone else. And this is all her play. And what really cracked my heart open was I realized that depression wasn't even the problem. It was just a symptom. And
Explain that.
Well, that really broke my brain, because my whole problem was a spiritual ignorance. That was my pain. My pain was the longing for God. The pain of being disconnected from divinity, from my own true nature, was so great that it created a deafening depression for me for over half my life. And it's interesting because that was one of the other through lines through my rockstar journey, was that I had wanted a connection with God so bad. I had wanted a connection with divinity so bad. I just wanted to know that there was something bigger than me who loved me, who was guiding me. And I never got that. I went to all these spiritual things. I went to festivals. I went to temples, and I never felt any connection. And my brain would run with that and be like, "You're alone. You're an atheist. No one cares about you. Your life is meaningless." All these stories. And I was like the most grumpy, unwilling atheist there was. And then I had this experience of plant medicine, and it changed all that. And and I think that's the magic of plant medicine, is that we're dealing with an intelligence here.
Yeah.
We're dealing with a larger body of consciousness. We're dealing with spirit whose intelligence is so, we can't rationalize it. That's how big it is.
Yeah.
I've played music in plant medicine ceremonies for a year and a half as a side hustle, and I've seen hundreds of people do ayahuasca, and it leaves me speechless every time to see 20 people in a room all having the exact experience they need for their own healing, and how all those different people interact to help each other heal. And it's a story writing that you cannot tell.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the realization of, oh, this medicine, this divinity, the goddess, has been with me the whole time, but I just could not see her. I could not feel her. And that's where the pain was from. So that's what I write about in the book, is just we are all guided, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
Whether we can see it with our eyes or not. And just because we can't see it with our eyes doesn't mean it's not there. So for me, that's where the magic is. And then I also didn't want to, so I'll just stop talking and just,
No, it's great. I mean, I think it's this, you were given such a gift through this medicine, and I've experienced similar downloads and insights. And I think what's important is, after you have such a big experience, and this is where I would say I have not done this well, is I've not taken the time to integrate it into my life. And it sounds like you have done a really good job of having these transformative experiences, but then really applying it and integrating it into your life, into your writing, into the knowledge in this book. So maybe let's spend a moment and talk about, how have you integrated these experiences? How have you continued to keep this connection to your divine intelligence through this? What are your practices?
That's a really good question. I think with plant medicine, there's different levels in how she works. I think there's the light switch level, where you have an experience and everything's different. And those are rare, but they happen. You have an experience and you're like, oh, depression's gone. I know God. And like for me, that was that experience.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna lie if I say I remembered my divinity every day, because I didn't. Like I healed depression, and then anxiety came up to be healed, and that's been a dogfight for the past 2.5 years.
Yep.
But that's the big question with plant medicine, is how do you integrate it? And you're given these visions, you're given this way of being. Like I was in one ceremony, and she gave me a download of how to show up as a man, of what healthy masculine looks like. And it took me a year and a half to integrate. And it was really hard. And I think that with plant medicine, we're talking about this idea of how do you take an idea of something and turn it into a way of being. And then it goes back to conditioning.
Yeah.
So say the divinity thing. So I have 28 years of judging people, of thinking people are stupid, of feeling separate from people, and that's how I'm conditioned. And now I have this ayahuasca ceremony, and I'm given this download. Oh wait, everyone's a piece of God. Everyone's a slice of divinity. How does that change how I treat people? How does that change how I show up in the world? And then you do work around, okay, what does it look like that I'm a person that treats everyone as a piece of God? Do I walk into the supermarket and yell at people for being too slow? Or do I have compassion and say, wow, they're just at a different stage than I am, or they're at this place? So that's where the real work comes in, and then it's just conditioning, and it's reminding yourself over and over again. And then there's also a magic to it. And I think I've seen a lot of people struggle with plant medicine, including myself, is because you drink too much or you go to too many ceremonies.
Yeah.
And my friend, after I had 3 mind-blowing ceremonies, I decided to try all the plant medicines. So I went on a tour, and my friend, I'm sure you can relate to that. Yeah. I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean you took a secretion off a toad and I have to smoke?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you mean I have to burn this into my arm? I'll do that.
Yeah.
Like, ego death.
This guy got so into it. He's like, made an announcement. I'm going to donate $100 million to plant medicine.
That's amazing.
I don't know how that's related to him. I don't know. I don't know how that's related at all to this conversation. But yeah, sure.
I did was like, I did all these plant medicines, and one of my friend mentor teacher plant medicine mom stopped me, and she's like, Kyle, it's like you went to a buffet and you took all the food, you put it on a tray, and you haven't eaten anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you're not integrating anything, you doofus.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing with plant medicine is that we're given these really big downloads.
Yeah.
And there's still some stuff that she told me years ago that I have not integrated.
Yeah, sure.
But then this is also the tricky thing with plant medicine too, is that like the integration is also sort of the trust and the magic of like, you trust when I'm supposed to know something, I'll know it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think there has been some great insights that I've had in the past, 4 or 5 weeks. I just went to this meditation retreat for 4 days with this group called Oneness out of India. And the teaching was so simple. I mean, the teaching was so simple. It was basically, there's only 2 states that a human can be in at any given time, a suffering state and non-suffering state. And, and basically all of spirituality, all this work we're doing is to live more in a beautiful state and less in a suffering state. And the only way that most people deal with their suffering state is either try to numb, so chasing pleasure, or to manage it by organizing their life externally every single way possible so that it's going to be the best possible life, so then they'll be happy. And I have learned this lesson so many times that no matter what I do externally, it is not going to eliminate my suffering. That this is an internal job. An inside job. And I've known this, and I mean, it's taught, everywhere from Sunday school when I was a kid to plant medicine journeys to now this group in India teaching it to me. And who knows what I'll say 5 years from now, but I really just was like, okay, I think I'm actually ready to learn this lesson. I think I've done every single thing humanly possible to make my external life perfect, and it still led to suffering.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that's where depression is a teacher. Depression showed up and said, no, Blake, you can climb the best mountains, have the best friends, have a great relationship, have amazing kids, have all these things, do all these experiences. But if you're doing those things to try to alleviate your suffering, you're just going to create more suffering.
Yep.
And that is a lesson that, for whatever reason, God, the universe, kept showing me, but I wasn't ready to really learn it as I've been to now. And the reason I'm so much more conducive to learning this is because of my suffering and because of my depression. And it goes back to thank God for depression, because without the depression, without getting so close to wanting to end my life, I wouldn't be so open to learning something as simple as like stop focusing on the external, bozo. Like this is an inside game.
Yeah.
And so that really resonates with me. Okay, so where were we? We were talking. Oh yeah, many different plant medicines. I think what would be great is if you could explain, whether it was ayahuasca ceremony or one of the other medicines that you worked with, how did that inform the very practical knowledge in this book? Because I think I really want to remind people that the reason we're sitting here today is because, as Tyler said, I had kind of tried everything, had access to all different types of resources, had worked with plant medicine in the past, had tried pharmaceuticals, had my brain zapped with transmagnetic stimulation. There was a series of things that happened in the last 4 months. One of them was for me getting off the pharmaceuticals and getting a clear head again. There was a lot of self-care that happened. There was therapy. But this book really was a guide for me during that time. And that's why we're sitting here. And so I want to make sure that we get back to some of the really key things that someone can do today, where they can buy the book, read the book, or what are the things that they can do right away? What are the things that potentially are really likely sources of some of their suffering and depression that they can look at. And the one specifically I want to talk about, you have a whole chapter about living in alignment and taking a life inventory.
Yeah.
Will you explain that a little bit? Because of all the chapters I read, that and then also the chapter on why not to kill myself at the end were probably the most relevant and most profound for me. So
Amazing.
What does living in alignment mean, and how do you go through a process to see if you are or you're not?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you're looking at depression, there's something I call the manageables.
Okay.
And that is, what are the practical things that you can shift and change in your life that might alleviate suffering? That can be friend group, where you live, where you work. So there's something that I call living in alignment, and that's, are you living a life that is authentic, that's true to you, that you're existing on your deepest level of being? Or are you living out of alignment, which is, are you living for other people? Are you working a job you hate? Are you with friends you don't want to be around? And it kind of comes back to intention of, why are you doing what you're doing? Are you holding on to things because you think you should hold on to them, or because you really want them?
Okay.
So I put together this idea of a life inventory, and it's where you look at everything in your life, from friends to living situation to housing to what your house actually looks like or apartment looks like, to your clothes, to everything, to just take an inventory of how stoked you are or how happy you are with it. Because then that gives you tangible information of steps to take.
Okay.
Because again, with depression, it can be this black cloud of amorphous matter of, I don't know what to do with this, and I'm going to panic. But then if we look and say, oh, what are the manageable things in my life that might be contributing to my depression?
Yeah. What are the easy wins?
Yeah, what are the easy wins?
Like, if you're not excising, there's one right there.
Yeah.
And it's really...
Not sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really a helpful reflection of your book, or it's a helpful reflection of what you're saying about the book, because I got slack from plant medicine people who said, you should write this whole book about ayahuasca. And I said, that's not the point.
No.
Like, the point is, that's one thing, but it's not going to be for everybody. And I want to have a book that is going to present a full picture and a full smorgasbord of different things you could try. Because again, everyone's depression is different. And the book basically came about through channeling. Like, I would just sit down and write every day and not really have a conception of what it was going to be. And I think that the book is smarter than me. It has more intelligence than me, and it knew who it was going to be before I knew. Yeah. And it was just my job to show up and channel.
Wow.
Yeah. I 100% believe that. And that's why I think it's amazing at 33, and with your, it's not like you have a PhD in psychology or, I mean, this book is written, in a way that is so profound and so clear that I 100% agree. It had to be channeled, from a divine intelligence.
It means a lot too, because that was also one of my biggest fears publishing the book. Is I went from being a rock star who's screaming things like, I want to die on stage, to people screaming, to mental health guy. Yeah. And one of the most insane parts about publishing this book is that I put a post out about it and raised money, and I raised like $22,000 from 200 people. Wow. No one had read a page. Yeah, wow. I just told them my story. Yeah. And then I started to put it out, and I started getting messages from people that were like, this book was more helpful than all the 10 therapists I've had in the past 20 years. Amen. And to me, that was it was a huge relief, because I saw a complete void in the market for books like this, because there were books written by therapists, books written by doctors, and the way that I see it, and my Tantra teacher has an analogy like this of, like, if you're lost in the jungle, you want someone who has also been lost in the jungle to help you out of it. Yeah. And they've gotten out of the jungle, and they can say, here are the things to watch out for when you're in the jungle. Yeah. That's good. And you don't want someone who said, oh, I've seen 2,000 people lost in the jungle. It seems when they're lost in the jungle, this is what helps them. But he has no direct experience of what it's like to be lost in the jungle. Yeah. So for me, that was my message with this book, and just saying that, hey, I've been through this, you can get out of it. I'm not special. Yeah. I am not different from anybody. If I can get out of it, anyone can get out of it. Yeah. If I can write a book. Yeah.
That came across, really strong, and I think that gave me a lot of hope. Yeah. I think that, in terms of, you writing this book put you more in alignment with your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we oftentimes can think about alignment and being aligned with our purpose as something that's very aspirational and important. But one of the things that really helped me in the book, and that you have an exercise in the book about, is doing a deep dive about what in your life is currently not serving you.
Yeah.
And being radically effing honest about that. And, you know, you have questions that says, like, how might this be contributing to my depression? What do I gain from being stuck in this pattern? Am I living my full truth in this situation, or living according to what others are expecting of me? What would I do in this situation if I was fearless? And that really hit me hard when I was in Arizona, and I had to really look at areas in my life that weren't in alignment. And I recognized, as I sat with those, I could see how they were contributing to my depression. And I think that it's easy for us when we're depressed just to accept, this is my life, this is the way it is, I'm trapped, I can't make change. But what you say in the book is everyone has personal agency. Like, you can blow it all up, right? I think you said something like that in the book, of like, you can just let it all fall apart.
Yeah.
You can literally start over from scratch. I mean, you know, it is your life, and you only get one of them.
It's true. It's true.
And so talk to me a little bit about the importance of, you know, this looking at the areas in your life that aren't serving you, and really addressing those. And maybe give me one example of one that you had that helped you in getting out of your depression.
Yeah. That's great. Depression, it's really intimate.
Yeah.
Because it inspires you to have a deeper relationship with yourself and get to know you better.
Yeah.
And to me, that is one of the biggest gifts.
Yeah.
And I think, going back to energy, if we're with people we don't want to be with, if we're stuck in a job we don't want to be in, it affects everything. I think I talk about human gumbo.
Yeah. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, and I really like that analogy because I think it's across the board. So it's this idea of, I get mad about this. Like, there's a lot of tech people that talk about, like, how our brains are like computers, and they're like, you gotta life hack everything, and like, and like do these things. And I'm like, no, it's like gumbo. Like, it's more holistic or inorganic. Like, everything affects everything. So if we're in a relationship we shouldn't be in, it's gonna affect your mental health in some way. And I think one of, like, the greatest examples for me about this was, is this speaking to the question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, really just, I think, and we're almost out of time, so I want to make sure we hit 2 points. But just, what is a really specific example of something that wasn't serving you in your life?
Oh, okay.
That you were afraid, maybe you, you refused to look at it for a while, but eventually you said, fuck it, I'm going to look at this, and it made a change, and it contributed to your healing.
The biggest one was Beware Darkness.
Yeah.
I started this band when I was 18.
Yeah.
My entire life I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be a lead singer. And then I got it, and then I was still in a record deal. I still had the band. I never quit.
Yeah.
I was jumping out of it, jumping back into it, and I was too afraid to let it go.
Yeah.
And everyone talks about, like, you have to be successful, get successful, and, like, there was no conversation where, what do you do when this thing that is not serving you anymore? Like, I was scared to let it go because I was like, who am I without this thing? And what happened was, it was blocking everything.
Yeah.
It was blocking money flow. It was blocking me moving on to the next chapter. It was hurting my mental health because every time I went back to it, I was doing this thing I didn't want to do. And finally, I broke out of it like a year and a half ago, like embarrassingly late. But when I did, it was like everything else cleared. And finally, I was like, oh my God, I'm over this thing, and now I can find other healing and move on to the next chapter of my life.
That's great.
And it was difficult. It was a really, I mean, I'm sure you know how it is, like, you know, building a company and then not knowing what to do next step. And it's like, it's those lulls, I think, of like, oof. And that's where the trust comes in. So
great. Okay. So the last thing, and probably one of the most important things I want to talk about, is the topic of suicide.
Yeah.
It's the last chapter in your book. But as I was flipping through your book when I first got it, I saw there was a chapter on that. I was at a very, very dark, hopeless place. So I read that chapter first. And it was really profound for me. And so I'd love for you just to share a little bit about how you speak to someone who is having those thoughts, because it was incredibly helpful to me, and I have to assume that maybe someone listening is unfortunately having those thoughts, and I think it could be helpful to them.
Yeah. I think that if you choose that path, the ending's written. Like that's where, let me speak on this more. Like, if you choose to end your life, I'm learning now that there's karmic implications that are not that good.
Yeah.
There's all these other things that don't seem to sit well, but I think it's such a gift to be born in this body
Mm-hmm.
that people don't realize how rare it's actually to be born in a human body.
Mm-hmm.
And we have no idea where our lives are going to go.
Yes.
No idea.
Yeah.
I'd never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be sitting here with you, both of you, in a room right now.
Yeah.
I never thought my depression would be healed. And again, depression is just telling you stories that it's not going to get better, but that's not true. That's just your mind thinking in a certain way that cannot see beyond its own suffering. And I think just keep going. And I know that's cheesy or cliche, but just keep walking. Like, you can always make that choice, but just don't. Just one day soon, but not now is what I told myself.
I love that.
That's what I
said. One day soon, but not now. And
it's like I'm gonna die, and I'm like, okay, if I want to kill myself, I'll do it one day soon, but not now. Just see what happens.
Yeah.
And then, sure enough, I found the
Just
healing.
not today.
Yeah, just not today. And my buddy also had a really good recommendation about, it's like the last shot effort of, like, if you really have nothing else to lose, go try some of these healing modalities like psychedelics or plant medicine or a workshop. Like, try some radical thing that will greatly shift your energy and your consciousness.
Yeah, make a radical change.
Yeah, because again, if you have nothing to lose.
You have nothing to lose. I agree. It's that you make a radical change, totally change careers, change relationships, move somewhere, do something that, even if it's a biggest disaster of your life, it's still better than ending your life.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, like, you get like a free shot.
Yep.
In some ways, like, if you get to the place where you're like, okay, my only option is to kill myself, and then you're like, but I could do something. I get a free shot.
Yeah.
I mean,
I love that.
And I get a free shot to try something totally radically different and see what happens.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, a radical change in your circumstances can be exactly what you need to at least lift yourself a little bit out, so then you can do some more of this other work. And I think plant medicine is one of those options as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I don't know if this speaks to your experience, but it was my experience that, like, right around the corner from being suicidal is where the most magic came in.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%. That's exactly. It's exactly where. And I think you see that in AA with people who hit rock bottom.
Yep.
I mean, it is spiritually designed. Yeah. Like, if you really think about, Joseph Campbell, A Hero's Journey, it is designed to the human experience that sometimes the point of greatest suffering is the doorway into the greatest awareness, bliss, and joy. Yeah. And so knowing that that's a possibility is such a great motivator to keep going, to maybe say someday soon, but not today.
Yeah.
And I really, really like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like, if anyone is listening and is in that place, just not today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also what I tell people too is that we live in duality. So if you're capable of that much suffering, you are equally as capable of that much bliss and consciousness. It's not magic, it's science.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah. Well,
we are 3 people in this room who have who have fallen to the point of feeling suicidal. 4 people,
including the engineer.
4, the producer, the incredibly talented producer, director, and editor. 4 people who at one point were convinced that the only option was suicidal, and we kicked the can another day, and life has got so much better. Everything passes. I think this too shall pass is something that is so important to have in your head.
And I want to just kind of close, and then Kyle, have you wrap it up for us. But it really does go back to the title of the book, thank God for depression. It's, can you have the curiosity to view your depression as your greatest teacher? See your depression as a life raft that has been thrown to you as you're flailing around in the ocean. Because ultimately, without that experience, you would not have the motivation to make the change in your life that you need to make so you can have a truly beautiful life. Mm-hmm. And so I really think, and that was such a key point for me, is that if we can look at this depression as a teacher and get curious about why it is showing up, what in our life is not in alignment, why are we experiencing this? Because there is a reason. And I think you have so much conviction around that. Your life is an example of that. Tyler's life example of that. My life is becoming more of an example of that. It is a teacher, and if you can just hold on, if you can take simple steps to improve certain things, not only will you get through it, but you will have a such richer human experience than if you never had it in the first place.
Yeah, Kyle, you're not going to beat that. We're good.
No.
Honestly, we're good.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, thanks. Painful lessons. Fuck yeah. Amazing. Kyle.
Thanks.
This is spectacular.
That was great. I might be the sweatiest. Tyler, this is like a hot box in here. I need to go to the sauna tonight.